Welcome to the channel where we provide an alternative view to the common narrative. Today I would like to talk about Ukraine and the narrative that goes around it. It seems to me the narrative is sort of type of shifting, but I don't see any reason why I would be shifting it, or even if the narrative is correctly interpreted. The common narrative at this stage is that people are unhappy with Zelensky, and Zelensky has lost its clout, and that Ukraine is basically in trouble because most of their attention is now being converted to Israel, and all the ammunition and military assistance going to Israel, and Ukraine is getting nothing. And there's now talk of negotiations and all this other crap that goes with it. And, well, things are changing. But I don't think that people really understand it. Again, you know, I like the series Why I Disagree with Everybody, and Why I Disagree with Alex Mercuris and so on. And I actually there was a video with him and Glenn, what's his name? In any case, there was a series. No, let's stop that. I don't think that people really understand how the setup is going. One should think about what was Zelensky. And I think I've talked many times about that before. Zelensky was an actor. And then he became the president of Ukraine. And he came onto the scene as a peacemaker with the Donbass. And when he came to power, he did quite the opposite. And one always has to ask yourself, why has he done the opposite as what he has promised during his election campaign? And at that stage, the new Nazis were very strong and very prominent in the Ukrainian military, in the government. Because at the end of the day, they were the guys that created the Maidan uprising in 2014. And they had their own militia, which were trained by the US and so on. They had made a number of war crimes and so on that nobody's talking about, again being political correct and doesn't want to stir the hornet's nest and so on, etc., etc. And at the end of the day, he turned on, and he was probably forced in doing the opposite of what is promised because of the right-wing sector, not the right sector group, but the right part of the political spectrum and the people in power, or the people that had a lot of influence. So that is why probably things escalated in the Donbass, and then Russia invaded Ukraine, and the whole Russian SMO started. And then we had some negotiations for peace. And then last year there was a chance for peace. There was a chance for an agreement. And then the story goes that Boris Johnson stopped that peace agreement. And probably at the command or instruction of the US, and Zelensky didn't sign that. And then Zelensky went on this huge fanfare right through the world, trying to garner support from the European countries and from America and whoever he could join to get their support. Now, in all aspects, that was nothing more than an actor going onto a marketing tour to market or to gain support, military support for Ukraine. And that is how it was seen. And the world supported him because he was a good marketer, and he got a lot of support from the rest of the world. And everything went hunky-dory. The problem now is that with all marketing campaigns, these things come to an end. The glitz and glimmer, whatever you want to call it, is fading. And Zelensky is losing his markability. It's becoming old news. It's like they say, the narrative. If they don't want to, the world doesn't want to watch the 10th rerun of a certain TV series. And therefore, he's not that much in the news anymore. And suddenly, the commentators believe that, Ukraine is losing support from the world. Zelensky is using the support of the world for Ukraine. And I'm sorry to say that is a fallacy. Zelensky is not Ukraine. Zelensky is the marketing arm of Ukraine. He has performed his functions, but it's now probably some time, but the war will go on, because once a war has started, it's very, very difficult to stop it. It has unknown consequences. It has a life of its own, it goes in one direction, another direction, whatever. And the fact that Ukraine is not in the news because we hear everything about Israel doesn't also mean that it's the end of Ukraine. There are more people talking about the peace in the media, talking about peace agreements and all this other stuff that has to happen. But on the same basis, there are a lot of people that are against the peace agreement. So it is just that there are more reporters now writing about peace agreements. But one has to ask yourself, who governs you? Your government or your media? So if some reporters now get an epiphany and they realize but the Ukrainian is losing, does it mean that the government is going to change its policy? No, it's not going to change its policy. They have their own agenda and they will keep on doing it. So the more you read articles doesn't mean much. And the fact is you still read a lot of articles from reporters that report government people that are pro-Ukraine. And the war is not ending. It only tells you that the control over the narrative is being lost. The focus is so much on Israel that the guys that control the narrative have lost a little bit of focus and are not controlling the narrative about Ukraine that much. That's the only thing you can conclude from this. So I don't understand why other people, the usual commentators that we all know and talk about, why they have any other ideas about this whole matter. You know, it's like you got to step back a little bit and view the whole scenery, not only focus on single events. It doesn't tell you much. In this one talk about, Glenn Deason, Alexander Mercouris and Mearsheimer was there. And the funny thing is I agree with everything that Mearsheimer said this time. But I can't agree with Alexander. Oh, no. It gets weirder by the day. So he was talking about, he saw a speech of Putin, and Putin apparently let it sort of shine through on what his terms would be for a settlement or a negotiated settlement in Ukraine and stuff like that. And that the Russians are ready to do this and that and that and that and that and that. And I thought to myself, what the hell is this guy thinking? Is he dreaming or living in a fantasy world or whatever? Just because Putin had, in one of his speeches, sort of talked a little bit more friendly or made some speech. People talk a lot of stuff. Doesn't mean always what they mean or what you interpret what they mean and so on. But now Putin is ready for negotiation. No. Russia has not achieved what it wants, what it needs to achieve. It still needs to liberate the whole of Donbass, Donetsk Oblast, the whole of Zaporizhzhia, and the whole of Kherson region. And now I understand from some military experts on, the Russians have divided, I think, the area into 5 or 7 regions. And they have each their commander and they have to achieve certain objectives and so on. And that's why you see at Vievka a lot of action and movement and so on. Not that I fully agree with with the strategies and what they execute, because I made a video about that and I don't understand why they are doing it. There's also some talk now that Ukrainians have crossed the Dnieper River in the Kherson region and now are on the eastern bank of Dnieper, and that's sort of a problem for the Russians, but I don't know how much truth is that, because I haven't heard any more. It was only today, and I haven't heard any more reports about that. But the world is, the Western world is saying, yeah, but it's a stalemate, and General Zaluzhny from Ukraine is sort of openly saying now that the counteroffensive has failed and so on, and then now he's been reprimanded by Zelensky and his advisors that it's the wrong thing to say. Yes, it's the wrong thing to say for Zelensky's part, because he has to keep the narrative. He has to keep the narrative going and the marketing speech going. And Zelensky cannot be allowed to say the truth. But everybody knew about the thing from the start. They all knew that the counteroffensive will fail. That is why the Ukrainian forces had a lackluster counteroffensive that never got onto its way, because this is not the way that you do it. You don't do it bitwise by bitwise. That's not a counteroffensive. A counteroffensive is supposed to drive where the enemy sort of overextends themselves, and then you take the opportunity from overextension and drive the people back, and thereby you hope you can let them run, keep on running instead of stopping and then turning around and shooting you again. That's a function of a counteroffensive. But sending 2 or 3 vehicles there or being shot, that's not a counteroffensive. And yes, you know, I said before in this other video that Putin said that they destroyed 90,000 men and 600 tanks and so on. And then I asked, but where do these 600 tanks come from? But daily you can read reports and videos and so on, and Ukrainian tanks are still being destroyed. And there are still men dying. And the Zelensky said now it became a stalemate. No, it's not a stalemate. It just sort of all quiet on the Western Front, well, in this case, the Eastern Front. Waiting for the winter, waiting for regrouping, waiting for certain things to settle down. And the Russians are doing a number of attacks and so on. Sometimes they are repelled, sometimes they have to re-attack. I said about in Adveska, they had to 3 times re-attack. Twice they were driven back by the Ukrainian forces. People, you must think this is war. It's not a PC game, actually. People, when you die permanently. And you get wounded, you get permanently wounded. If you lose hardware, they are not respawned. Or it's like not in a movie like Rambo and so on, that one guy can shoot down. Doesn't matter how good you are. Even in special forces, they are brilliant, it's supposed to be brilliant trained. In a firefight, they will also lose men. Because that's statistics. The statistics tell you how many men you will lose. Just how it works. But winter is now on our hands. And therefore, nothing much going to happen there. Now, the Russians have accumulated armament and forces now for a long time, but they haven't even used it this year. For a whole 12 months. Why? Because they were waiting. They're not going to sacrifice their own people in an attack if they can defend and sort of kill the other guys in the attacking phase. Because we all know when you attack, you lose more men than when you defend. And that is the whole strategy of the Russians. And then I have to constantly hear about the Ukrainians are running out of manpower by having, say, 400,000 men killed. As if the fighting force in the Ukraine population consists out of, say, 30 million people and 400,000 people are the fighting force. Who comes up with these type of numbers? I told you about that American soldier, that Matthew, what is his name? In a previous video. I would rather believe him. Because he's not a bullshitter. He's not he's a soldier, not like the other common reporters or journalists or whatever you want to call them that post on Telegram and stuff like that. He's a real soldier. He looks at it. in a totally different. He has no reason to. Was it Matthew van Dijk or something? Yeah. He has no other narrative to tell you except for what it is, and he has experience to see it for what it is. There's more than enough, men. There's a shortage of ammunition, but hey, they are still artillery pieces. They are still artillery ammunition. Maybe less than what they would have liked to have, but they still have it. Same with the armor. Not every armor is destroyed fully. A lot of the armor can be recovered and repaired again, unless you totally burn out. But going onto a minefield, you can recover that one. So, and the F-16s are still coming. And there was now about a report from the German defense minister, I think it's the defense minister, who said that, yes, they promised Ukraine something like 1,155,000 ammunition rounds. But they are working very hard on that, but the capacity in Germany, in Europe is not enough, so they won't meet the target, but they're still producing. And they're still producing different weapon systems. Weapon systems from countries that are not mentioned in the news or anywhere else. You just get it by chance if somebody writes an article on that. Or it says you, like the, say the Polish, I think it's called the Crab, the self-propelled howitzer. That wasn't publicly announced. Nobody talked about it, but they got them. There's Italian ones. There's some other weapon systems that you don't hear about, but they are there. So he's not officially announced like in the US. And they are still planning on giving Ukraine money for the military. And then we come actually by the big, the large discrepancy, fallacy, I don't know how to describe it. Last year, it was said that America has spent something like $130 billion on Ukraine, of which like 35-40 billion was in armament. That is what we were told, and that's what everybody sort of conveyed to you as the viewer. Now, that number is gone. I don't know where it is, but now, oh yeah, no, America gave Ukraine like 48 billion of money for armament, and they are looking for more money, and they are looking for like 64 billion from the government, of which not everything will go to armament. A lot of it will go for support of Ukraine, the government, and the budget and stuff like that. So what happened to the 130 billion from last year? I don't know. There's no talk about that anymore. So we have 48 in armament. 48 in armament, and thinking about Afghanistan, $3 trillion. Ukraine is nothing then. And America financed Afghanistan on its own, but here they have the help of the Europeans, also supplying armament. And then everybody forgets about this whole story. America provides these weapons on a land lease agreement. That money has to be paid back by Ukraine, somewhere, some other, in the next 50 years. So the money that the Americans are giving to Ukraine is not for free. There's always something attached to it. So why does Congress then go so ballistic about this whole story? And that's more internal politics. But at the end of the day, the money will be given to Ukraine. Doesn't matter how it looks. And now the Europeans are always, some other guys said, yeah, the war in Ukraine will go on for another 5 years. Probably. Unless Russia makes a move. But Russia doesn't look like it's going to make a move. He's waiting probably for something else. Now again, looking at what Alex has said and so on, there was the Minsk agreement. And the revelations by, what's her name, Merkel, of it was all a ruse. They never intended to honor that agreement. Had a huge impact on the credibility of the West to make any agreement. The confiscation of Russian assets, reserve assets, big problem. The withdrawal of Donald Trump from the JPC with Iran, big problem. So credibility, and this now we have Israel. And the unconditional support of Israel by the US and Europe, and the total hypocrisy that goes with it. And that the Americans are making, and the Europeans are making up the rules, whatever it fits them. You have to abide by the rules, but they don't have to. It is all creating a total distrust and of the Western world. And really, if Putin makes an agreement with these guys and hopes that these guys will honor that agreement, then he should never have, then he totally disappoints me. You cannot trust the West. Doesn't matter. America has violated or broken all agreements in its total history. There's nothing that he has ever agreed on and kept to his promise. Nothing. So the only way Russia can ensure the security, the indivisible, the security that he wants, is to do it with Europe. And Europe alone. And for that he has to wait until Europe economically collapses. Now, the US dollar is collapsing. I actually wanted to make a video about the financial situations, about liquidity on the American debt. I've read through it and I still don't understand it. So I'll first have to read another couple of times the same articles. But it was a very good article. But the Americans are failing. They are having a budget deficit of $2 trillion per year. $2 trillion. They are short. They have to borrow. And they don't know who's going to borrow it to them. They borrow probably internally, but they're going to connive it and so on. They're going to rig the markets and so on. I'm not about that. But the Europeans are suffering economically wise. They are trying to cut themselves off, or at least to reduce the exposure to China. Africa doesn't believe the Europeans anymore. They want to go on their own way. South America is going more to the eastern side. China's getting investment there and money from them and stuff like that. So the influence of the West is totally waning and so on. And there's a new kids on block, and this whole story is not going to work. And now we have, like I said, Israel, and that has had huge impact on the Middle East as well. So the Middle East is also not going to support America and the West because they see for what it is. Yes, a lot of wealth of the Middle East is still located in the Western world, but to be honest, slowly but surely that wealth will be withdrawn. Just like the Chinese are getting rid of their US debt. So what has to happen is that anyway, Europe has to collapse. And if they collapse financially, then they will realize they will need to accommodate and change and make sacrifices and stuff like that to join the new bloc. That will also be a breakup of NATO. America will try to save some of the NATO with the old Baltic states like Poland and so on, and I know if they're going to continue with that. Europe will in any case realize they have to build up their own military, because not having a military and being dependent on America caused this problem in the first place, that they had to obey America and destroy their own economies as they have done in the last 2 years. They were at the mercy of the Americans. And if they have their own army, then they can make a mutual security pact with Russia itself and make peace with that. And anyway, that is how I see it actually being followed. Russia has to go to the border of Kiev. It has to take the south of Ukraine, like Odessa and Nikolaev. It has no other choice, because anything less than that will be dependent on agreement, which everybody knows the agreement will not be honored. The Americans are saying, yeah, but no peace agreement without the Ukrainians. But anyway, they are lying because America lies, and what they do and what they say are usually two different things. America has a purpose in Ukraine. It will not allow Ukraine to make peace with Russia until that objective has been met. But that objective will not be met because at the end of the day, it's like in this, I can't understand why is anybody else even doubting the victory of the Russians and the loss of Ukraine. They lost the war, Ukraine lost the war before Russia even invaded it. There is no Goliath versus Goliath. You can see it now in Israel as well. You think Hamas is going to win? Military? No. Oh, political word is lots of change coming up. Yes, I can understand that. But I don't understand why we're even discussing about the failure of the counteroffensive. It was obvious from the start. It's not going to happen. It was never an option. And now they want to blame Zelensky about that. No. That was obvious from the start. If you believe something else, you're involved. In any case, so then there's a talk, but Russia doesn't want to invade the rest of the Western soil because then they have to fight a sort of insurgency type of war. But again, think about this. The way in order to stop an insurgency type of war, like in Afghanistan or Iraq and so on, is to win the hearts and minds of the people. And America hasn't done it, but the Russians are doing it. They are putting a hell of a lot of money and constructions into the Donbass area and the four oblasts that they have annexed or become part of Russia. They have done a lot of development. And if they gain the other oblasts as well, the way that you get the support of the population and the way that you can reverse the indoctrination from being anti-Russian is to supply services and develop, build new houses, new flats, new roads, new water, labor, provide jobs, schools, medical facilities, all that stuff. Build. And then you show what they had and what they now gained. And nobody wants an insurgent. And if there's insurgents, the population will go against them because they will know they're losing a lot. That is how Russia can proceed. If he wants to go to Kharkiv or the northern sections who's supposed to be anti-Russian, that's what you do. You put a hell of a lot of money into those reconstructions. And you make it better because at the end of the day, Ukraine was a great country, and then it was left to corruption and stealing and exploitation by their own oligarchs and by the Western world. And it collapsed, and the people are poor there. And now you give them opportunities, and they become middle class. And suddenly they have stuff to lose, and they appreciate what they got. So there's always a way forward, but this narrative of ending the war and that's no, forget it. What has happened this year in Ukraine? Nothing. 12 months down the line. 12 months, and the contact line hasn't really shifted. Yes, there was Bakhmut. There's now Adviivka. Yes, there are some localized battles. Yes, we had the drama about Prigozhin and so on. But the war in per se, nothing has happened. And next year it might be the same. Unless Russia starts to move. But I don't think they will be moving at this stage. They are waiting for other stuff. They're waiting for the world to get tired. Instead of doing a financial attack of the Western on Russia and hoping that Russia will collapse, I believe Russia is patient enough to wait for the Western world to collapse on their financial problems. In any case, that's my story for today. So until next time then, cheers.